do
Share
that.
it
I
on
don't know.
both. Yeah.
Do
Double
they have
dip.
one too? There you go.
I know they do. I don't think I'm in it
I
officially.
might be. Let me
I
see.
might
I don't know
have.
if I have any roles in it.
Yeah, no, I joined it at some point. Um, I thought about joining it to post my links to streaming and whatnot, but I'm like, I'm gonna get so lost, and no one's going to that section to find streamers. Like right now, there's got to be hundreds. So
Oh God, you're right. That is definitely a thing.
there's probably someone posting to that channel like every 5 seconds. It just doesn't seem. That's not the way to get discovered. I don't think. What am I opening? I had another window open. Oh, the stream manager. That's right. Okay, Twitch stream manager. I'll do an ad now to turn off pre-rolls for at least half an hour.
Yes, there are many people posting in streams and videos. It looks like it's not quite on the hour, but yeah, it's roughly there.
Yeah. All right. Let me get the link and I'll post it to the Factorio one.
Should I be... I'm going to put the stream notes in front of me. I'm going to kind of figure out which way I should be facing for the... I don't know how I'm going to be arranged on screen.
Oh. I forgot to write in the advanced fluid handling mod spotlight. Whoops. Quick.
Let me open it up.
Advanced.
That's the one with the giant pipes, right?
No, that's fluid must flow is what you're thinking of.
Oh, this is the one with the directed ones where you have like the little underground looking things that... I got you. Okay.
Yep.
I do remember using that a little and then being like, I already kind of have solved this problem with just this complex sort of ethos about how to lay underground pipes.
That sounds like Galdoc. Complex ethos rather than simple mod solution. Classic.
Yeah.
Classic. 39K downloads.
Just as a heads up, the things I'll probably mention are the fact that I started trying to get the achievements in Factorio before 2.0, sort of like as a self-imposed thing I could do.
Oh, nice.
And playing Satisfactory with my son. And most of the stuff I'll have to say about the work on my own mod, it's mostly paused until 2.0 comes out and the dust has settled on the API before I start coding again. But I've been doing a bunch of art, so I'll talk about that a little.
That makes a lot of sense. Thus the talk about icon badges.
Yes. And also I'm giving a talk at my local college about game dev stuff. I'll be talking about the 3D to 2D pipeline.
Oh, that's cool.
And that's next Wednesday. There's no point in plugging it. I don't know if I have a link.
Okay. That's why I couldn't find... I was like, what am I doing? And I was looking for the Factorio Discord to post the link. But I had our chat open, and so I kept like glancing over the window because it was never the Factorio Discord. It was, our video chat. All right, where is that channel? Dave, 29 months. Thank you. Welcome back. What is the channel called? I can't find it. Video stream plug. There it is. Let
me go ahead and get my ad out of the way.
Must Grow Podcast. Come join as we chat about the FFFs and Satisfactory 1.0 release. Boom. Okay. That's done.
Hello, Code Green. Hello, Celerity Toss. Sorry, I know it's your stream. I'm just saying hi.
What?
I'm greeting people who are saying hi.
Yeah, you should. That's great. Okay. I think we are pretty good to go. So we'll just give it another minute or two for people to arrive. I need to go get my iced green tea.
Ooh, fancy. I should probably refill my coffee mug. Let me do that right now while we're doing the thing. Ugh. also take this time to clean my glasses.
Yes, very important. All right. You know, I should probably put me behind you because that looks kind of weird. That overlap.
If you want, I can get my green screen.
No, this is good.
Okay.
This is good. Try to make our heads the same size. That's always the challenge.
It's actually quite a fun experience to unfurl a green screen midstream. It just looks kind of fun.
Oh, yeah, like the world just turns into invisible.
Right.
Okay, pull up the show notes, and I'm good to go. Are you good to go?
I am good to go.
All right. How's audio levels, those of you here on Twitch? Are we about the same volume-wise? I guess I can tweak that a little bit if we need to. Yeah, it looks balanced on the OBS end, but weirdly, even if the decibels are roughly the same from each person, sometimes certain voices just sound louder because of the pitches and whatnot. So sometimes you actually want the decibels to be imbalanced. It's weird. And it also has a lot to do with like the mic settings and, you know, EQ and all that. So anyway, it needs to sound good, not be equal decibels. But anyway, I digress.
It is the sound mixing problem. You want to make sure that the things sit well in the mix.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there needs to be a measure of like how loud does it sound to humans rather than just decibels, because it's not the same thing. Anyway, all right, let's get started. Hey, Dukes, thanks for the 30 months. Welcome.
Hey, there seems to be a hype train. You have a limited time to earn exclusive emotes.
Oh, I guess the train emote? I don't know. I don't feel like I made that. Okay, I'm going to get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Factory Must Grow, episode 19. We are joined by Galdoc today. Welcome, Galdoc. How you doing?
Hello. I'm doing quite well. How are you?
I'm doing good. It's just another Monday in life. So today on the cast, we're going to talk about another mod spotlight. As usual, we will discuss the recent Factorio Friday facts from the last 2 weeks, and we'll be talking mostly about the Satisfactory 1.0 release, which came out just this last Tuesday, about a week ago, so I'm excited to chat about some of that stuff, and I know Galdoc is too. Before we dive in, I want to thank the show's patrons. The show is possible because of you, the listener. If you'd like to support the cast, head over to patreon.com/Krydax, and you can get different benefits there and such. So thank you all to the show's patrons. Today's mod spotlight is going to be one that I have used in every single Factorio play. First off, I'll start by saying I wanted to do a Satisfactory mod, but they're not ready for 1.0 yet, so we'll have to wait until maybe a future cast to cover some Satisfactory mods, because there have already been a few mods that I know existed in the previous versions that I actually want to use right now. One of them lets you build, I'm digressing, but it lets you build stackable poles as a default on the conveyor belts instead of the regular poles. So when you're building a belt from one place to another, it'll automatically like let you build up with stackables when you click. And that would be a huge change. Anyway, I digress. Today's spotlight is a Factorio mod that I hope is either somewhat integrated already into Factorio 2.0, though I think it isn't, which is a bit of a bummer because I've seen enough screenshots. It is advanced fluid handling, and I can't play without it. So what this mod is, if you don't know, it allows you to connect underground pipes to each other without needing to go overground. So there are a whole set of new entities added called underground extensions, which basically they don't connect to the overground pipes at all, and they're in all the different possible like 2D shapes. So there's an eye extension, so it's just a single tile that connects left and right or up and down to other underground connections. And you can walk over it, you can drive over it, like you can't build other buildings over it, but it doesn't get in the way. And it allows you to just easily extend an underground pipeline really far, and you can turn corners, and you can also split with these, right? So there's a T and a plus shape junction. So you can actually split off your pipe connections into, multiple pipelines, all while staying underground rather than having to do, the vanilla way to do a T junction requires 4 tiles, right? You've got to have the pipe to ground on all 3 sides and then the regular pipe in the middle. And now that's just changed to 1 tile. And on top of that, there are also pipe to grounds with any number of connections to the underground network. So you can have a pipe to ground that connects in 2 directions underground. And so what that can let you do is imagine you have a bunch of assemblers that all need, lube. You're making blue belts. And you can just add the pipe to ground right in front of it, and then it just automatically connects sideways to the assemblers next to it that also just have that pipe to ground. So it allows you to cut down massively on the number of pipes you need in your base and the pipe spaghetti, and it just is way cleaner, and there's way less tiles for pipes. One other thing, even just the single pipe to ground can go in any direction. So instead of having to be a pipe to ground that then kind of aims forwards with its underground connection, you can do a pipe to ground that then aims sideways with its underground connection. So it allows you to do all the combinations, and I love it.
Would you like me to share? I loaded the mod up on my game here right now. And I can change my output to show it instead of my face. Do you want me to show that? Would that help you?
Yeah, that's
all?
fine. I mean, the listeners won't have the advantage, the podcast listeners, but those here watching can see it, and that'll be good. But
that's right. I got to remember that.
Yeah, I feel like about half of the people listen and about half watch. It feels about an equal split, but yeah, basically, it's just a really handy mod to deal with pipe spaghetti. And given that a lot of mod packs in Factorio end up being far more focused on fluids, I feel that it's kind of necessary for bigger mod sets. If you're dealing with Bob's Angels or Pyanodons, I feel like having better pipe management is actually a really reasonable thing to add in. It doesn't feel very cheaty to me. Vanilla Factorio, it's the fluids are already fairly simple, or at least they have been prior to Space Age. And so I don't know if you necessarily need this mod for vanilla, but I still find it really handy. And it's what you could do in real life. Pipes can change directions underground in real life. So I've never loved how much the mess of pipes make in vanilla. It feels like you need way too many pipes for what is conceptually a pretty simple idea. So yeah, that's all I have to say about that. I forgot to mention, it was created 6 years ago by Stapler Gun, and it has about 40,000 downloads, which is a pretty high number for a quality of life mod like that. So, do you have any thoughts on advanced fluid handling, Galdoc?
The only one that I have is sort of the generic thought of separating out what is cheaty and what isn't. Like, people tell me things like, well, Galdoc, you should know that playing Squeak Through means you're a cheater McCheater face who is full of cheatingness and should feel very bad about yourself. Your accomplishments are nowhere near as cool as if you hadn't been playing it. And I'm saying this all tongue in cheek. No one's ever actually been that crass to me. But, there's that sort of feeling that it's cheaty.
Uh-huh. Yep.
I mean, heck, I personally, from my own playstyle, and I am caveating that what I would consider to be appropriately my own playstyle, sometimes I feel like bots can be cheaty, like if you use them in certain ways, not because they are cheaty, but because for me it sort of defeats one of the parts of the game that I like to do that I find fun. Whereas Bob's inserters or advanced fluid handling, see, I actually didn't understand how this thing worked until you just explained it. Like literally right now, I looked at this and I couldn't figure out what the heck I was doing, and so I turned the mod off. That's actually kind of interesting now that you're explaining this to me. But like, I just want to reiterate to anyone who's wanting to use these mods but feels hesitant because it's maybe cheaty, find the thing that you like to be fun and play that game.
Yep.
Make your version of it, tune the settings however you like, and don't feel bad and don't feel like you need to be judged by anybody else. So
yeah. And that being said, I've always found that conversation really interesting too, because there have actually been, I don't know if fights is the right word, but heated discussions in some of the mod discords for Factorio, because some people are playing with certain mods and other people are like, your experience. And I'll just say, it is true. Certain mods will drastically change your experience of the game to the point where it's hard to compare experiences with other players. And that's where I need myself. I like to draw the line, because it's like, it's fine that you're doing that. we don't even have to call it cheating. You can play however you want, but we can't really compare our experiences anymore once you start using that mod. There are certain mods like that, right? Like if you're playing with the Omni Matter mod, where all ore is just one ore and it changes a million other things and there's Omni compression, like if you're playing with that mod, you are having a different game experience. It still has a lot of the same elements if you're doing Pyanodons plus that, but it's a very different, like it changes everything. And it changes everything in a way where we can't compare my base to your base because they're going to be very different. And challenges that were really hard for me might actually be really easy for you, and vice versa, because that mod changes so much. Then there's mods like Bob's Inserters and Advanced Fluid Handling, which, yes, it's true that the blueprints I end up making will be denser and a little smaller, but the overall experience is the same. We're still automating the same resources. We're still having to belt things from one end of the base to the other. It's not going to change the fundamental gameplay. And I think there are mods that are like Bob's Inserters, Advanced Fluid Handling, Fluid Must Flow, some other things like that where, yes, they are cheaty, quote unquote. Like it allows you to build either a little smaller or a little differently or do things a little easier than in vanilla. But you're still going to have the same fundamental gameplay path that everyone else is, whether you're using it or not. Whereas, there are certain mods that actually add new mechanics or new content or change the content in a way where it's like, you're not really having the same experience anymore. And obviously there's a little bit of a gray line, like where does that change from one to the other? And not everybody agrees. And that's why these debates happen. But it is very interesting to talk about. Because then something like Squeak Through, I would argue, is even less of a gameplay change than Advanced Fluid Handling, where it's like, okay, yeah, you don't have to walk around a pipe. Does it really change that much?
I wish they had like a jump button for the Factorio engineer so that they could just like hop over the pipe or something.
Yeah.
I feel like that would be the same. He has legs. I'm just letting you know.
Exactly. So yeah, anyway, that's such an interesting conversation, and where people draw the line and such is different. So and to be honest, I mean, I think everybody has to fight a little bit to not just be an elitist jerk. Like people like to feel superior, and if they beat something without a cheesy mod, then they want to hold that over other people's heads. And I think we just have to be careful to be like, okay, let's be honest. It's not that big of a deal if you beat a game without Squeak Through versus with Squeak Through. Like, let's chill.
Sure.
Let's not gatekeep.
And to touch on Code Green's point about the throughput cheese, that's actually a true thing that these mods introduce. And what I would say to that is, personally, whenever I play a game like this, I will avoid certain cheesy behaviors, not because they're, cheaty per se, but they just feel yucky. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, we're talking about
in a lot of ways.
With Bob's adjustable inserters, when you have the pickup really close to the drop off, the throughput goes through the roof. And I've said multiple times, I would actually prefer a version of Bob's inserters that somehow, and I know this isn't possible with the Factorio runtime stuff, but somehow changes the inserter rotation speed to keep throughput the same, regardless of where you have the pickup and drop off set.
Right. That would get super complicated.
So that way you're not getting free throughput, but like you can still set where it picks up and drops off. That would be my preference if it could exist. But it can't. You would have to have a different entity for every possible combination. And then the game would have to like hot swap, when you change the pickup and drop off, it'd have to change it to the other entity, which has a different rotation speed. It'd be a mess. So anyway, there's the mod, Advanced Fluid Handling. I highly recommend it if you don't like pipe spaghetti. And now we're going to dive into the last two Friday facts before we talk about Satisfactory. So the first one is 427, and it was titled Combat Balancing and Space Age LAN. And this one was all about kind of the LAN party they hosted for Space Age, which, if you didn't know, the Wuba team hosted in Prague a big kind of like Space Age LAN party for about a week or so. Invited a bunch of streamers and YouTubers and stuff, and they got to play Space Age 2.0 in teams over the week. And you've probably, if you pay attention to Factorio news or YouTubers, you've probably seen some of your favorite YouTubers post videos about their experience. They are still under an NDA for everything that hasn't been announced in FFFs already, but they were able to at least share their impressions and what they liked and such. And it's been really cool to hear some of that. So we'll talk a little bit more about that, but the actual news in this FFF was about combat balancing. So I'll just kind of run through the main changes that they've made, because they're actually some big ones. The first one is that spawners now kind of level up with evolution. So their health is still 350 at the base amount, but then now at 100% evolution factor, it's 3,500 health. And so now they're really tanky spawners that the biters have when evolution's getting full. How do you feel about that one, Galdoc? I'm kind of mixed upon reading that.
There are certainly arguments for it. I feel like my guess is, just based on what they've shown so far, is that there's going to be consummate weaponry to sort of match this, and that's
Mm-hmm.
kind of the idea. But I've always been a player who, whenever I played with biters, which to be fair wasn't that frequently, I would always, get to a point where I could just rofl stomp them and feel good and feel like actually that was the intended way to do it. Like at a certain point, you really should just be ignoring the biters. Like they no longer are a threat. You're in a base that's got like rockets per minute. You've got such and such, science packs per minute, whatever. You really shouldn't have to. At a certain point, they should feel like they're a solved issue. I have a feeling that, considering there's going to be so many new planets and we've already seen the pentapods, there's going to be more stuff to smush. And I
Mm-hmm.
feel like this probably dovetails in with a plan for that. But as long as I can still get to the point where I can rofl stomp the bases and not have to constantly be pestered with, they're getting into your base or whatever, fine. Um
Yeah.
but yeah, that's one of those like time will tell sorts of
Exactly.
issues.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think the scare here, or what I'm scared of, scared is maybe an overstatement, but what I don't love in games is enemy scaling. Um, RPGs, in my opinion, the whole
Mm.
point is numbers go up, right? You get better equipment and it does 10 damage instead of 8 damage, and that feels good. But if your enemies, because you leveled up, now have 10 health instead of 8 health, nothing changed. And it feels bad when everything is just changing at the same rate automatically behind the scenes, then nothing feels like it's changing at all. And the biter bases previously were kind of almost a measuring stick of how powerful your weaponry was. It's like, how quickly do I melt through an entire biter nest of like 50 spawners? Because they all had the same health. And so you could tell you were doing more damage or faster damage if they were dying faster. But now they're going to be leveling up with you. And again, it comes to that question of like, will we get to the point where we feel like we're just face rolling them and demolishing them easily? I think we will. Like you said, there's new weaponry. I think it'll be fine. But I do wonder a little bit. I think I would prefer if they would actually have tiers like the biters, like they have small, medium, and large biters. I wish the spawners would do the same thing. I wish they would have breakpoints where the spawners actually level up rather than normal spawners just having more health as time goes on. I would prefer it to like, oh, 3 spawners kind of morph together into one big medium spawner, and then that one has more health. Because right now, visually, they're all going to look the same. They're just tougher than they were last time you fought them, and that feels a little weird to me. But anyway, moving on to some of the other changes.
Quality biters.
They made some tweaks. Spawners, they removed 15% explosion resistance. Medium, big, and behemoth worms, they increased health and laser resistance. Artillery, damage has been doubled. I'll say that again. They doubled artillery damage. So that helps, obviously, with the spawners having more health.
Absolutely. That's it. And honestly, that gets back to the point where I think it should be an automation question rather than a combat question. Like maybe we're going to, this is more of an automation game than it is a combat game. The combat there is to help give it some sort of context and meaning, I think. But doubling the artillery, chef's kiss.
Yeah. So now your artillery is going to be able to, wipe out the biters a lot better. The bases will probably still melt pretty fast, and that's a good change, especially because artillery it's not made for your base defense at close range. It's made for attacking them in an automated way. You get your artillery train, you get your blueprint for your artillery outpost, and you can almost automate, demolishing an entire radar swath of biters with that. And so I think that's a good change. A couple other tweaks. They buffed up combat robots a little bit, which I think is good. Distractors, they doubled the health and doubled the lifetime of distractors. And the distractors are the machine gun ones, right? That follow you. Is that right?
I don't know.
I get the names mixed up. Destroyers, they doubled the damage. and increase the range by 5. Those were the late tier ones. Those are the laser ones that follow you. Okay. Someone in the comments is saying distractors are the stationary ones, which I think have lasers. And so, yeah, I never use the stationary ones very much because it feels like they're just wasted. Like they'll do a little bit of damage and then they don't follow you to go attack new biters. So I always use the ones that follow you, which are the machine gun ones, the first ones, and the third ones, which are destroyers. Defenders is the first one. They had to use D names for all of them.
Definitely.
Okay, a couple other nice. A couple other changes they made. Personal lasers they found to be too strong, so they nerfed the damage by 66%. That means you now need 3 lasers to do what one laser did previously, but we have quality. So legendary lasers are going to help offset that. Plus, we have more slots in our power armor if we have that as high quality. So I think that offsets a bit. Cannon shells for the tank increase damage and range. Shotgun shells increase the damage by a lot, not quite double, but almost. Rockets accelerate 2 times faster, which is actually a big deal. So now when you attack with a rocket, it will reach its destination. It says accelerate twice as fast, which doesn't technically mean it gets there twice as fast, but it'll probably be close to that.
Yeah. It's to steal a line from the original Quake 1 rulebook. It's when that rocket absolutely positively has to be there on time.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Like FedEx or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Yeah, I mean, and the other problem is that like without context, all of these numbers are basically meaningless to me. Like I can't tell. It's all going to depend on what the enemies we're going to be pitted against are going to
exactly.
do. So this is all well and good. I actually am in the camp of I'm okay with the personal lasers being nerfed because I feel like that to a certain extent they want you to play with the new toys and they're like, okay, well we're going to make sure that you don't have this is the one. I mean, because let's face it. I mean, who here hasn't loaded their character up with a ton of personal lasers and just walked through a base, so to speak? You know, I again want to be able to ruffle stomp them, but I'm also okay with having to play with the toys a bit. So see what they got.
And it feels like we will still be able to do that. We will just need to do the work of getting the rare power armor and then the rare lasers, so that way we can actually, walk through a regular base instead of just 4 lasers, being able to kill that much. But a couple other things they mentioned in this FFF. There's one other kind of a big deal, kind of a little deal. This is one of those changes where some people are just gonna be like, "Oh my god, thank you." What they did is you should go read the FFF. They kind of did a fun little, I don't know if story is the right word, but basically to summarize, you know how stones, when they're deconstructed, drop stones on the ground? Well, now they don't anymore. When they're destroyed by artillery or whatever, the little stone poops, as they call them, are now
literally red. That's what it says.
Yep, that's what they wrote. They just removed the stones. So when your artillery destroy a rock, or if you drive through one with a tank or whatever, the random little stone droppings on the ground just won't exist anymore. If you deconstruct the rock with your own mining, they will still be there. And what they didn't answer is if you deconstruct it like with bots, will the little stones be there? I assume they will. But yeah, now you won't just randomly find rocks on the ground that could get picked up by a transport belt. Is the main reason that they were bringing up the change, is because now I don't know if they just noticed it more or because of some of the space age changes. Sometimes their base would break because there would be stone on random belts because of artillery destroying these, and eventually that stone ending up on belts.
As someone who played space exploration a whole lot, where the planets, this is space exploration, not space age.
Right.
Space exploration, where the ground is festooned.
Rocks are everywhere.
All manner of rocks that are constantly being hit by meteors as they come raining down on the planet, like from the beginning of the game. And you're constantly finding these little things. I think what they really needed to do was to, instead of simply removing them, instead add more of them and make them kinematically explode outward, so that there was a blast radius of these like stones. If you're the maker of Renai transportation, please listen and hear my call. I want you to fix this. I want you to hit one of these things, and I want the actual things to skitter like across the ground.
Oh, that'd be cool.
Make it even worse.
Yeah, it'd be cool. It'd be terrible, but it'd be cool.
It would be so terrible.
Yeah,
Don't actually do this. I'm so
but
sorry.
yeah, that's a simple change, but it'll make a big difference. It's one of those annoyances that now is no longer in the game. So yeah, there you go. So that's it for FFF 427. They talked a little bit about the LAN, but we'll talk about that after the next FFF. So then the next one is titled Reactor and Logistics Circuit Control. So that's a big deal. Now they added the ability to connect reactors to the circuit network, finally. So you can read the fuel in it and you can read the reactor temperature. So it makes it very easy to set up a smart reactor that only inserts fuel when it's cooling off or whatever. That's so much of a big difference. Before you had to do like an SR latch or RS latch, whatever, with like your steam tanks, and you had to have enough steam to be able to hold the entire however many fuel cells you end up putting in. When you do that, it was a whole mess. And now you can literally just hook it up to an inserter and be like, hey, when this cools off, turn on.
I actually want to point out something. This is one of those interesting little questions. Who here knows what an RS latch is? Who here knows how to do an RS latch using the Factorio system? And how many of you actually think that either first-time players or even old hands at the game know how to do these things? How hard is it to figure out how to do an RS latch using the mechanics? I will bet that many of you people here will say me. Oh, look, Code Green says me, and what? I don't know. Sorry, I don't know how to say it. This is not something that
not
is
easy.
a fair ask of a player. This is not at all a fair ask of the player.
It's not.
It's silly. So the fact that they've put this in here, and actually there is one thing I want to touch on because I always want to go scope out a little bit here. There was a where was the comment? In some ways, it feels a little too easy in context, saying that you can like just read the contents of the reactor. It feels a little too easy. Like the ask that gets around this thing that you were asking the players to do feels a little too hard. This feels like it's in the ethos of Factorio, but it's easy for me to say that because there's actually a very interesting principle underneath the surface here that can often be overlooked. And that is when you're trying to design a game like this, you could just give them the ability to do whatever the heck they want. They didn't have to pick undergrounds and make them work the way they do in the game. They didn't have to give you splitters and make them work the way they do in the game. They could have included things that currently are mods where you have like a thing where the belt goes in one way and 3 belts come out the other way and it like filters in certain ways. There's all these things they could have added to the game, but they didn't because there is a fine balance to be had here where you say, here are some tools. The tools are not infinite. You have to then take these tools and make more tools from them and solve these problems.
Yeah, they're the building blocks.
Exactly. And so I think there is this perception that this shouldn't be in that sort of building block set. The fact that, reactors can read their fuel contents. I super disagree with it, and I'm super in agreement that this should be in the game. I don't think this is a little too easy. Maybe I'm taking this out of context, but like...
Well, they said, so I want to add, in that paragraph, they said, in some ways it feels a little bit too easy. The previous solution of people reading the amount of steam in storage tanks felt like it needed more brain power and engineering, which can be a good thing. But then they say, but it's hard to justify missing capabilities with this reasoning. And that's where I agree with the Factorio team, and I agree with Galdoc here. I think 100%. There was missing functionality to be able to read the temperature from reactors. And as much as, it does feel cool when you set up an RS latch, most people who do set up an RS latch set it up from Googling on the Factorio wiki, how do I do an RS latch for my nuclear steam? And there were maybe a few people that figured it out themselves because they wanted the challenge, but it's like Redstone in Minecraft. You shouldn't have a hard ask on the player. And the other option was, of course, just fuel your reactors constantly. There's plenty of uranium. And that was totally doable in a lot of cases. But especially if you want the balance of your game to be good, you don't want to put a big divide between the players who are doing a lossless nuclear setup and players who aren't, right? Because players who are going to spend way less uranium on power than players who aren't. And I don't know if you want to make a hard line where like some of your players are going to have a lot of extra uranium and some aren't, and that's purely based on whether they know how to do an RS latch with circuit conditions. That doesn't feel
Yeah,
like the
should
right
not be
kind of place to balance it.
should not be
So
so outcome determinative whether you know that or
yeah,
not. And to figure out the RS latch, you have to know how and when I say you have to know it, you have to really, really understand how the circuit networks update per tick and how
right.
that information is propagated so that
Yeah,
you can
because it
actually
can
make a feedback loop.
you can
Because if you
make
don't know
something
that, you're
that
not going to think to
works.
do it.
Yeah, you can make something that works logically, but because you don't know how the tick thing works, it still doesn't end up functioning. Yeah, I've had my fill of being frustrated with the circuit system. However, it is worth noting we have a very what's the word? Much more powerful circuit system coming in 2.0 with all of
Mhm.
the new combinator and the new functionalities. So even setting up an RS latch probably will be easier in the new system too. I'm not sure. I
Oh, I'm
haven't
curious.
thought through that yet, but I'm guessing it will be.
I will
And they
measure its
make
ease by how many Dosh Doshington videos come out about it.
yeah, we'll wait to see. One more comment they make about the reactor and the heat. That's very interesting. They say, anyway, reading the heat and contents from the reactors may prove to be quite useful when you get to the final planet. So
Yeah. Hmm.
that's an interesting thought. Do you have any thoughts on what that could mean, Galdoc?
It's hard to speculate, but it certainly sounds like they're trying to say that heat is going to be a thing. And
Yeah,
I the Song of Ice and Fire, the elemental thing, like I feel like this is going to be something. But at the same time, I'm also kind of looking at space exploration and wondering maybe that's going to have some influence here because I feel like there's analogs that I don't want to sit here and say, these things will happen, but you know, I feel like there's analogs here that might be the case that could tell us.
yeah.
But honestly, I just kind of want to see. Like
I know. I'm
I'm
excited.
waiting for the next because they've done these wonderful sort of set pieces, if you will, where here's what is it, Gleba, and there was Vulcanus, and this is great. Like
Hmm.
I am down for whatever story thing comes next. I
Yeah.
do know that they have like these asteroids that seems like it might be a thing. What are they? I'm looking at the asteroid one right now, where they have things that look sort of icy, but I don't know. We'll have
Well,
to
we
see.
do know. I mean, that we do know the final planet's name. It's Aquilo. That was
Oh,
spoiled, sort of spoiled in the one about music. The name Aquila was on one of the music sheets in one of the
oh, was
pictures.
it?
Yeah, and
Ah.
it was recently confirmed spoiled by Troopin's video on the LAN party. And there was a comment from Discord between him and Dosh Doshington where Dosh mentioned the
Mhm.
word Aquilo. So we do know for sure that's the name of the final planet. Yeah. And so but apparently that's not related to Aqua. It's like I don't know the root word for that. It's a god. Roman name for
Oh,
Boreas or wind. So it's an ice or wind god or something like that. So it's probably going to be an ice planet is what a lot of people are speculating.
that sounds like it would be very ice. Nice.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
So
Sorry,
here,
doing my
let me read
Schwarzenegger's
this. Although he was normally
laughably
taken
literal.
as the north wind, the Roman writers, blah, 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 both took Boreas as a northeast wind, equivalent to the Roman god Aquilo. So it's like something about the northeast wind. So cold and ice and wind. Interesting. Interesting stuff. Anyway, reactors, you can read temps. It's great. Next thing they did is they added some circuit improvements to roboports. So now that we can set assembler recipes, they said there was one missing piece of the puzzle related to making a fully automated magical craft everything circuit setup. And that was the ability to read what items are missing from the logistics network, aka the requests that requesters
Mhm.
and players and Spidertrons are making. So now
That's great.
you can output the current like lack that the system has as a circuit signal. And so you
Mhm.
could request into buffer chests what your current base is lacking, for example, and you could then chain together separate logistics networks. You could set a train request based on that. So
This
it's
is so
actually
complicated now. Like
it's really cool.
I love it. I absolutely love it. This is so great. If I'm a first time Factorio player, I don't even what, huh?
It's crazy.
It's
I
gonna be so
actually am
fun.
wondering if, after we get our hands on Space Age, if the recommendation is going to be for new players to not buy the DLC yet, to play Vanilla Factorio with all the 2.0
That's interesting.
improvements, but play through Vanilla Factorio, beat the game. Once you've done that, then go buy Space Age. Because, like, I don't know, like, Space Age feels like it could be too much for a first time experience. This does feel like it could be a game where you play game one, then you get DLC and play again, rather than, like, start by buying both. But I don't know yet. We'll have to see.
That's an interesting point because, like, it's taking me many. I don't want to say years. I want to measure this in burnout cycles, which sounds
Exactly.
silly,
That's how
but
I
like
measure things too.
in Factorio burnout cycles, or each cycle I'll learn like a new thing. Like the first one was the circuit network. I think the third one was trains, right? Something like this. But I'll be curious to see how many people like want to get into Factorio for the first time at Space Age. Because right now it is still fairly complicated for the first time player to sort of
Yeah.
grok.
Yeah, and us, like, everyone, I want you as the listener to think about, you are not the normal Factorio player. The mere fact that you are listening to a podcast about a factory game,
Yes.
you're probably in the top 25, 25th percentile of factory players, maybe higher. Just the mere fact that you look at anything online related to it. There are so many Factorio players that they buy the game, they play the game, and that's it. They don't go on the Discord, they don't go on the Reddit, they don't. Maybe once they look at the Reddit, maybe once they Google something, but for the most part, they do zero. They don't engage in the, like, being engaged in a gaming community is already putting you in so much more of like the, you care about the complex stuff. You've probably played a lot more. You probably understand a lot more about it. Like, it's not what the average player does. And so
Yeah.
I just want to say that for all of us who are in the community, don't think that we are the average players. We are the power users. We're the ones who like to dive deeper. We like to deal with the harder things usually, but we're not the average user. And it's important to remember the average user does not know how to do an RS latch. They don't they're the average user is scared of trains, right? Like, trains, just using them at all is complicated. So now that we have all the new interrupt conditions and all these new circuit conditions, like the scope of the game is getting scarier and scarier to the average player. So I hope they do a good job kind of warming the player up into those. We'll see how that all goes, but anyway, there is a couple more features they added to logistic chests with circuits. Now you can disable requesters and you can disable providers.
That's huge.
It doesn't cancel current orders, so if you disable a provider and a bot was coming to pick something up, it'll still come grab it, but it won't grab new things from that. So that one is massive. Now you can say, hey, don't request steel plates into this requester unless we have more than 1,000 steel plates in the network.
That's so huge. Like I had to do such insane cockamamie stuff in order to make that. Like, I would have to, when I wanted to do something like this. I mean, I'm sure there's someone in the chat. I need someone to punk me on this because clearly I'm a noob. But like, I would set a requester chest to request one stack of the thing or whatever it was. But I would have to do this thing where I connect the circuit network to only do the thing when it's below this number, and then it was a nightmare. It was cats and dogs living together,
Yeah, basically the way to do this a little bit more easily before was to have a requester chest that would just request the thing, and then an inserter would only run if the circuit network had 1,000 steel plates. But the problem is now you have those buffers always being filled without priority given. And so you kind of have to spend the buffer, and then once you've spent the buffer, it all works fine. But now that if you have a low priority thing that only wants steel when you have bunches of extra, it won't even request the steel until you have enough. And that means you're not wasting all that extra buffer. And any time where you can reduce buffers is a good thing. A lot of new players think buffers are actually helpful. In most cases, buffers are bad. You only want buffers generally for things that you spend very infrequently and inconsistently, like inserters. You want to buffer your inserters because you might need to build 300 at one time. But you don't want to buffer your iron between the iron production and your red science pack production, because then you're just wasting iron because your red science pack production is going. You should buffer the red science packs maybe if you're not researching consistently, but like Really, yeah. So often places that you can reduce buffers is going to save your Factorio time, your factory time, um, because time spent buffering is time not spent using that resource. So,
And I'm currently, just based on what we said a minute ago, currently picturing a first time player listening to the paragraph that you just said, and I'm imagining the look on their face as they go, "What did that human just say with his face words? Those were English. I knew the words, but I
mm-hmm,
don't know what just happened.
exactly.
I'm gonna go play something else." No, but yeah, so it's great. I love it. I still don't know what all the implications are. Like, I think at some point it might be worth it to do sort of like a compilation video of all of these things, but collate it not by when the information was released, but instead by topic.
Mm,
Collate all the train updates, collate all the logistics network updates, et cetera, et cetera. I think that might be helpful just for the players who are very used to the game, who don't even know what the features are, who haven't been coming to the Factorio Friday Facts things,
yeah.
who haven't been keeping up, who've been deliberately. Actually, it would be really good, I think, is a spoiler-free version of this
Mm-hmm,
that spoke merely of the game mechanics and not like
yeah.
the locations or any of those things. So
Yeah.
I don't know,
Yeah.
and
Those are
I'm a
good
huge,
ideas. Because
I'm a huge,
they're adding more to the game than is already in the game. I've said this a million
yeah,
times, and it continues to be more and more true with everything they spoil. It's like, oh, there's a couple more features, and it's like the number of features that are being added is a greater number than the list of features that exist in Factorio as it is now. It's really, I mean, I guess it depends on how you break down features, maybe, but really they are adding. It feels like more than already exists.
mhm.
So there's a lot. Anyway, the final thing to this FFF 428 was them chatting a little bit about the LAN party that they had. So, as I already mentioned, they had a LAN party in Prague. Super awesome. I was not able to go, unfortunately, but I kind of didn't want to be spoiled on Space Age, so there was a part of me that didn't want to go, but also it would have been really cool. But all that to say, they said,
I think both you and I both would have gone had we been invited. I'm just going to go ahead and throw that out there. Or at least I
yeah,
would have. I want to speak for you.
yeah, I was invited. I just wasn't able to go.
I see.
Yeah, so that
Fair enough.
was,
Okay.
yeah. But yeah, that was a bit of a bummer. But yeah, during the event, they had nearly 900 individual feedback reports, which is kind of crazy.
Ooh.
And they said some of the teams finished in the 50 hours that they played. And so what that means is like a team can finish in 50 hours, but a team is going to be able to finish the game faster. And what I heard from a couple of the videos I watched is some of the teams were like trying to rush. So they were specifically like, let's try to get to the final planet and see all the content there is. So it sounds like a team of 4 or 5 people, if they're rushing, can finish the game in 50 hours. But even then, these are experienced Factorio players we're talking
These are
about.
masters. This is like the
Yeah.
creme de la creme. You thought you
Yeah,
were the.
these are the people who have spent, thousands of hours in the game. So it sounds like the average player is probably still going to be 100 to 150 hours potentially to finish the game, which is a pretty big playtime compared to what we had already. They're more than doubling the playtime that the game is.
Mhm. Can I aside for a moment?
Yes.
Because this is, thank you, Code Green, for pointing this out. So, last week I went over the Factorio Friday Facts as usual. Not like the most recent one, but the one before, right? The one we talked about first. And while I was talking about this, actually, I have to. I might even have to back up a little bit more. The night before, Thursday night, this was on September the 5th. I'm sitting there, I've got this idea in my head. I want to talk to someone. I want to talk to someone about this because I'm trying to figure out what to stream on Friday. Maybe I'll work on this idea that I've been kicking around. So I contact Code Green, and I'm like, so can I talk this out with you again? And he's like, sure. And I'm like, can I just join voice chat with you? He's like, okay, sure. So I start talking with Code Green about this. And, I'm going back and forth and other people are hopping on. And then I hear Arch Ezekiel. And I'm like, huh, that's weird. And Arch is like, what do you mean? I was like, I hear your voice, but I don't see your little name in the little Discord thing, right? It's not showing up. And you're like, huh, that seems to be a little odd. Now, I don't know what's going on, by the way. The whole I, the whole LAN party thing hadn't actually been announced yet at this point. So I'm just like, oh, that's curious. That's Discord being Discord. Look at that odd thing that's happening right now. So then I start reading the Factorio Friday Facts the next morning, and Code Green's like, hey, what was your exact sentence? I have to read this out. It was something along the lines of, we got it. Like, let's talk. I'm like, no. We talked last night. He's like, no, let's talk. I'm like, sure, why not? This sounds fun. We're talking about the Factorio Friday Facts as LAN party. That sounds cool. So he comes on. Well, wouldn't you know, the same thing happens.
Arch Ezekiel coming through Code Green.
Out of absolutely nowhere. I'm like, look at this. And so I start losing my mind. I'm going off. I'm like bringing my Discord window onto the main whatever thing showing all the stuff. And I'm like, look, it shows us you're talking there, but you're not logged in. And everyone in the chat's like, that seems to be strange.
That's so funny.
Then Ryguard comes on. And I'm like, this is really weird. And I'm losing my mind. The people we're all like kind of like dunking on Discord. And I just want to, by the way, if you're the people in charge of running Discord, this prank would not have been possible if your app didn't suck so hard. Anyways, so
true that.
I'm being somewhat facetious, but the jank is real. And so then Code Green's like, oh, I know what it is. And he turns the camera on, and there they all are.
They're all there. Oh, yeah, that's amazing.
It was great. It was
that's amazing.
It was heartwarming. So
that's fun.
It was a good prank. And I was like, you got to see in real time how slow I am on the uptake for that kind of prank.
That's hilarious. Yeah, I love that. So yeah, anyway, they had the LAN party. It seems like it went really well. It seems like the playtime that they have for the game, again, it's more than doubling the playtime of the game. So that's crazy. I'm very excited. I'm curious to see the new speedrun times, to beat the game. Right now we're just over what is it, like an hour and a half or something, and I'm like, it's gonna be like 10 hours. I don't know. It's hard to imagine doing all of the stuff you need to do in just like a couple hours. That doesn't seem possible. I don't know. But again, I haven't seen the game in its fullness, so who really knows? But anyway, any other thoughts on that?
On that, no, I think we touched on most of it. It's something I'm continuing to look forward to, and it is something that I don't know. The hype is real. I'll just say it that way.
It sure is. I cannot get more hyped. So let's move on to some main topics here. But before we dive into Satisfactory, I just wanted to check in with you. How's mod development been going with you recently?
So there are basically, I'm waiting for 2.0 to come out before I start going back to coding. There's just no point. Whatever I code right now would have to be, I don't want to say scrapped, but basically thoroughly retooled. I am seriously considering turning this is something that several people in the Discord have actually said that I should do. I'm kind of resistant to it, but they think I should turn Galdoc's manufacturing more into an API rather than just a standalone mod. And I think there's some merit to that, but I also think that is a ton of work. But if I'm going to do it, 2.0 would be the time when I've got to basically just refactor the whole code base anyways. Like, it's not so much refactoring that it's not going to be possible, but like, I am certain that the API definitions are going to change enough that I'm going to have to go through each individual, thing I'm doing and just fix it. Because I know they're getting rid of, they've mentioned that they're getting rid of some of the, I don't want to say inconsistencies, but they essentially in the API allow you to slice the loaf a couple of different ways. You can declare recipe, or is it ingredients? I can't remember. But basically, there's some ways that they allowed you to code stuff that was a little bit lazy, but that they would just sort of read for you anyways. But then that kind of becomes a nightmare because anyone who wants to interface with your code now has to account for all the different ways that you can declare these things.
You could have been lazy, yeah.
And so they're tightening the way it's done. So I'm gonna have to redo everything anyway. So I might. But in the meantime, I've been working on a lot of art. And so that means not just art, but also Blender. I'm making a Blender set of nodes so that people can, if they wish and they understand Blender. Unfortunately, I can't make this for the general user. It's just too in-depth. Maybe I can, I don't know. But I'm making something to help make icons. So like I'm making a rock generator right now. And it'll eventually turn into a plant generator and whatever else. So this is something that will help someone who doesn't have a huge time budget for doing their art, could just pick up and not crank out a couple of things. Um, but we'll see. We'll see where that goes.
That's
Making
awesome.
an add-on. Well, it's awesome in theory, but it has to be actually something that I can pull off, and I'm still trying to figure out if I can get it to where I'm matching people's skill levels to the tech. So
Sure.
that's basically the.
Yeah, Blender's above
Um,
my head. I'm not a graphic designer, and everything that you guys do in Blender always impresses me. I've watched like your skim through your tutorials, and I'm like, yeah, those are words. I understand most of them, but when you put them together, I got no idea what's going on.
I like your words, your funny words, Magic Man. What was
Exactly. Exactly. Awesome. Yeah,
that?
well, I'm excited to see kind of where things go after Space Age. I know the modding community is just, it's already one of the better modding communities, Factorio, and I'm excited to see, when Space Age comes out, what they're going to do with it. But let's turn our attention towards Satisfactory. We've already, gosh, we're
Yes.
already 48 minutes into the podcast. We got
Oh, sorry.
got a little sidetracked, as we do. It's a fun time. But yeah, so
I'm back
Satisfactory
to that.
1.0 released, and it is incredible. It's been a massive success of a game. It's one of the most played games on Steam, and that's not even counting Epic. Let me look at the Steam concurrent players by game. I'm going to pull up the chart right now. And Satisfactory is number 8 on Steam, and there's a ton of people who have it on Epic because it was available on Epic for a year or more
That would be
before
me.
Steam. I have it on
That's
Epic.
where I bought it first. Mhm.
Yeah, so
And
there's
then I bought it on Steam too.
there's thousands of people who are playing it that aren't counting towards this number, and it's already 8th place at 141,000 people. So yeah, incredibly successful launch. Congratulations to the Satisfactory team. They deserve it. They have the best community management of any game company of all time, as far as I'm concerned. I don't think anyone else even comes close.
Really? Oh.
I mean, community management wise, I'm not saying as a dev team, but as far as how they've done the community stuff, I can't think of any other game that's come close. Then again, there's a lot of game communities out there, so maybe I'm just not connected.
No, it's fine. It's fine.
To
I'm
them
not
at
trying
all.
to denigrate the. I was like, wow, that's something, because I'm not in the community is all. I'm on their Discord, so I don't. It's just. But that's good to hear. Like,
yeah,
honestly.
when you follow, it's mostly on the YouTube that they do their communications, and just the way they communicate with the players and the way that they accept feedback and just the way they announce things. Even they put so much work into what other teams would just do as patch notes, right? Like they'll release a whole video with like jokes and fun and again, and these are things that like it doesn't make the game better that those have been true, but it makes the experience of being in the community really fun, and it makes more people, I think, stick with the game and such. So it's good marketing, at least at the worst.
There was that manifested in the game in one hilarious moment. I don't want to spoil anything, but there was a one item that you could unlock that you did something for, and then the AI is like, so obviously this thing doesn't do this one thing you might think it does. If you think it does, you should look at it, or whatever. It was basically just drawing. It was very obviously being incredibly sassy towards a bunch of people who were like, can you do this thing? Evidently they'd been, I'm assuming they had to have been getting some question over and over again that they were so tired of. They were like, you know what? We're going to dunk on you in the game.
That's funny.
It made me laugh so hard.
Yeah. Okay,
I don't know. And it wasn't mean-spirited either, so.
No. The Ada in the game is kind of your virtual assistant person that talks as you unlock and do things, and she is sassy to the nines. It's pretty crazy. So the game 1.0 release, many of you who are listening to this podcast have probably played the game at some point or been interested in playing the game at some point if you haven't. And I will say now's the time to jump in. Like, it is relatively bug free. All the polish that they've wanted to add is there. Like, pretty much it's everything's there. It's not like a 1.0 release. Yeah, this is it. And it's amazing. I've been having a great time. I've been streaming it a lot. They've added, so I haven't played, by the way, for about 3 years, and so there's a ton of new features that they added before the 1.0 that I still haven't gotten to use, like blueprints or zooping, and it's just like it's so much
I love
easier to
zooping.
build now. It's you can build large bases, and with blueprints you can build things where belts are already connected for you, and you don't have to connect every single merger to every single other merger and every single building. Now you can just blueprint it, and it's so nice.
Oh,
And yeah,
I haven't gotten there yet. That
highly
sounds dope.
highly recommend trying the blueprints. Once you get them, they save you a lot of time. And the two big things, I guess it's kind of one together big thing that they've added is the alien technology. Previously in the game, you could find these things called Mercer spheres and summer sloops in the game world, and it would say summer sloop work in progress, like WIP. And you couldn't do
Mhm.
anything with them. And now finally they have their use. And I will spoil it here if you don't want any spoilers at all, like you can skip ahead. But basically, the Mercer spheres allow for what are called dimensional depots. And this is a topic I want to talk about a little bit because it is a different form of logistics that I haven't seen other factory games do yet. And it allows you to make something called a dimensional depot, and you upload items into it. It's just like a storage container. You belt items into the depot, and then the depot it has an internal inventory of only one stack, and it uploads from its internal inventory into the cloud. And basically it uploads your items into a cloud server, and then you can access them for either building buildings or handcrafting from the cloud
Wait,
instantly.
wait, wait, wait. Are you saying I could download more RAM?
You can well, only if RAM is an item. But
I don't know
yes,
if RAM is an item.
if there was something
Right.
called a RAM, you could download it. But yeah, basically, it's kind of like logistics bots in a way, in Factorio, where they deliver a certain amount to your inventory. You can only have so many stacks uploaded to the cloud. You can upgrade that as time goes on, but it only, even at max upgrades, which are not easy to get to, you could only have 5 stacks in the cloud, which is a decent amount, but not like, and not enough to build, like if you're building a huge area of foundations, the concrete that you have in the cloud might not be enough. You might need to go grab some manually. But when you're just building your base, I have found the dimensional depots to always have enough for what I need. When I'm just building, belts from here to there, or building assemblers here, or connecting this storage container to that assembler, like you just always have the resources you need. And so it's saving me 30 inventory slots, and I never have to run back and forth. It's crazy. Is it too good? Is what keeps popping up into my mind. Is this too powerful? It's like it's logistics bots that are instant, and it doesn't take up your inventory slots. What do you think? Is it
I
too good, or do you just love it?
I had no idea. You did spoil it for me. I don't care. I would have tuned out
Oh,
if I
you
did.
haven't
But
even
like,
gotten to it yet?
no.
Oh,
Like the thing is,
it's an
I don't have a ton of time to play. Like I've gotten some Summers loops, which my son is like, "What is that?" I'm like, "That's called a cool S, son. That's a
it
cool
is
S
the cool
that
S.
everybody in the '90s drew on their Trapper Keepers." Okay,
Yes,
I'm just letting you
exactly.
know that that was a thing, and it still is a thing,
And
and I
it's a
love
thing
it.
for the aliens apparently.
It
Um,
seems so.
but
But
yeah,
yeah, no, I haven't figured that out yet. I'm
okay.
still like, I'm still. The problem is that like I streamed a little bit of it, and then I played some with my son, and then I have like an individual game going. I don't have actually a ton of time to play games, so I'm still trying to get used to it. But I will say that from your description, it does not sound like too much, and that's for one big reason. You should get to a point in the game when you are allowed to be in flow. You should be allowed to get into flow and just build and
Uh-huh.
do what you're trying to do, and not and you should be able to at some point through whatever the mechanisms of the game are, in order to get to a state where you don't have to sit there and fidget with every little, do I have enough concrete? And then you get, because
Right.
you go to build something and you got to stop and I need more iron rods or whatever it is, right?
Yep.
And then you got to sit there and you got to hear the tink 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 and the ratcheting sound over and over again while you make your. I mean, evidently that's what it sounds like when you make bags of concrete out of limestone. So who knew? But you know,
So, how far are you? What tier are you at, roughly?
the farthest I've gotten, so well, like so when I played it first, it was literally when it came out on Epic. So it was
Right.
like
Yeah.
something update 3 or whatever I think it was.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so that was when I got to that point, I had gotten, there's like some sort of uh rebar shooty gun thing that you could get. And I
Yep.
got that, and that was about when I stopped. Right now, I'm not even there yet. I don't have that.
Okay.
I've gotten the space elevator, and I've gotten the first upgrade to the space elevator, and that's it.
Okay, you're pretty close.
So
Like you already could access dimensional depots. You just need to find the material. I'll just say.
okay, well, I've gotten the ma'am, and I've
Hmm.
said, "Ma'am, may I please?" And she has said no because I don't
Yes.
have a lot of the stuff.
Yeah, you need the whatever they're called, the alien fluctuators. SAM
Mm.
fluctuators. Yeah. So
Yeah, I have not found any of that stuff.
yeah. So I would suggest, and to all of you listening at home, my suggestion is hunt for the quality of life stuff. It's all worth your time. So SAM, being the strange alien matter, is worth it. Caterium is worth it. Quartz is worth it. Going and finding, and you can find quartz rocks and caterium rocks in the world, and you can then scan for that ore in the, like, so you find the rock and you break it with your little pick thing, and then once you have some of it, you can take that to the MAM, and then that unlocks the ability for you to scan for it with your resource scanner, so you can find the actual node. So those are not too hard to find, and quartz and caterium both give you some really big quality of life upgrades between better power poles. The blade runners are massive. You walk, I mean, you
They have
run.
blade runners. That's
Yeah,
amazing.
you run and jump basically twice as fast and twice as high. It's you want them
Got it.
ASAP. I think those are from Quartz. I can't remember. And
Actually, they're from
then
a movie and that I made about dreaming about electric sheep. I'm just kidding.
yes. But these are actual runners that you run on. All that to
No, I
say,
got you. Sorry.
the quality of life stuff is huge that they've unlocked, and it's worth kind of rushing towards it. You could play the entire game without it, and you don't need it, but then you don't have to
But
run.
yeah,
Having these dimensional depots means you don't have to run to your mall every 5 seconds to get more iron plates or iron rods, and so it's very much worth it. And you can get them as soon as you have steel, basically, production
okay.
going. So that's where it is in the tech tree, but it's like it's an adjacent unlock. And Factorio doesn't do these, right? Satisfactory has these MAM researches, which is a separate tech tree from the main researches, and you could just ignore them. But I am of the opinion that you will have a worse play experience if you never do the Caterium tree, the Quartz tree, the Strange Alien Matter tree. Like, those are very much worth pursuing, because your quality of life goes so much higher. But yeah, what
Yeah,
else can
and
you do?
those are the things that I love. I love those sorts of quality of life things.
Yeah. Just to kind of cover it for other players, Galdoc, I guess close your ears if you don't want to hear what the summer sloops do. It's nothing
It's
too
fine.
crazy. It's factory stuff. But the function that summer sloops allow is basically a production boost. So that's like productivity modules in Factorio, but they don't slow things down. They do increase the power requirement by a lot, but you get free outputs, which was not a thing in Satisfactory before. There were no productivity modules, but summer sloops basically double as a productivity module. They're unlocked a little bit later. And then they also do one other thing, which is a power plant boost thing. So it produces 500 megawatts, and it boosts the rest of your power network by 10%. So if
That's
you're
cool.
already making 10 gigawatts, it'll basically add a free gigawatt on top of that, plus the 500 megawatts it makes itself. They're pretty expensive, though, so those are even later game than I am at this point, because they require 10 summer sloops to build, and it's hard to find one. So like, you need to do quite a bit of exploration to be able to build these. And yeah, those are the new, like, alien things that are kind of now part of the I don't know what you call it, but kind of the core gameplay
gameplay loop.
progress. Like, and then they also added tier 9, which I have not gotten to yet, and I did watch the video on their YouTube about it, but they added all sorts of new recipes. Tier 9 seems like a pretty hefty tier. There's a lot to do in it, and that's kind of picking up where the previous update left off at tier 8. So not only is there new kind of core gameplay content, everything's polished. Most of the bugs are ironed out. There's still a couple bugs that have been bothering me, one of which is the hard drive scanner doesn't work. So I went through all this trouble to unlock the ability to scan for hard drives in my object scanner, and it doesn't work. Even if you're standing right next to a drop pod, it doesn't even show you that it's there. So that's a bit of a bummer, but the game is awesome. I've been enjoying it so much. all of the quality of life stuff, I feel like fixes a lot of my complaints about a 3D factory game. Like the zooping itself, I mean, you can now, you used to have to click every single foundation into
Yeah,
place.
it was so tedious.
Yeah, and now you can just zoop 10 of them across, and then 10 of them across, and then 10 of them across, and before you know it, you have a 10 by 10 foundation, and it took you like, I don't know, 30 seconds. So,
I still have some criticisms of it. I move far slower. Like, this could just be I'm still getting used to the game, but I move far slower in Satisfactory when it comes to building stuff.
mm-hmm.
It'll take me like it's the problem of when you're standing on the ground, which is what it's like at the beginning of the game. Like, yes, you later on get, towers, you can get up on them and you can look down, and then it's a lot
Yep,
easier.
jetpacks.
But like when you're at the beginning of the game, you now have that problem of the thing I'm putting it on is horizontal, so that means that my mouse movements are hypersensitive. I
Yes.
move it up a little tiny bit, and then it like moves, but at the same time, it's really hard to see where it is exactly because of that horizontality. Is that a word? Horizontality, whatever. Um,
Horizontality.
Disappearing into the horizon.
Yes.
But basically, it's like it's the combination of things that I just go and I'm like, I don't know how to make this work in a
Do
way
you
that's
know
fast.
about hologram locking and nudging?
So yes, you press H and you can use
Yeah,
the arrow
yeah.
keys, but
That
that makes me
helps.
take my hand off the mouse, and I'm just like, I
Also
don't.
true.
I don't know what the solution is either. I have a couple of ideas, but it doesn't matter because I'm sure that there are ways of getting around it later on in the game that aren't just me building a tower and climbing to the top of it.
Yeah, I mean the jetpack helps. The problem with the jetpack is you're constantly falling or going up, so it's hard to build things mid jetpack, but you can easily get up to a vantage point
Sure.
with that. The other thing is the Blade Runners, same thing. You can jump up higher with that. So if you kind of have your, it depends on, it's almost like you need to build scaffolding, into your factories so that you can
And that's
have
what I
a
do.
good vantage point. Like if you have a
Yeah.
catwalk across an entire area, it's going to be way easier to stand up on that catwalk and build down onto the foundations, like than what you're saying, like building horizontal. The other nice thing is that they unlock later, like a hover pack kind of thing that uses your electric grid.
Okay.
So it's like a jetpack, but you hover. So it's kind of like God
Okay.
mode flight, as long as you're near your electric network.
That's
And
great.
and that's exactly what you want, right, for building, because then you can get that
Yeah.
vertical vantage point and you can look down, and it's pretty great. Um, so yeah, that's super nice. But yeah, one thing I've been noticing in Satisfactory in my current playthrough is just how fun it is to explore. Like the
Yeah.
game world is beautiful,
Hmm.
and I don't know. Do you enjoy the exploration and combat, or is
Yeah.
that kind of like not your
But
thing?
well, combat is lame. I say lame because I have like a stun gun, and there's this thing that's not terribly difficult to kill, but it comes and tries to eat your face, and you're just like, no, no eating face, and it dies, and that's fine. But like, I don't. It's sort of like with the same thing with Factorio, and I don't feel like it's really a combat oriented game, and that's sort of
Hmm.
there to kind of give the world flavor. But I like the flavor of the world. Like, I love running around the world and finding these glowing slug things and this cave where there's these mushrooms that are all glowy and sparkly. And that's something that does not really exist in Factorio.
Right.
Um, the closest I've ever come to that kind of experience in Factorio was with the Ruins mod. That was actually kind of fun because sometimes you could like find a piece of equipment that wasn't unlocked for you or that like circumvented something. So that was kind of cool. But
Yeah.
like Satisfactory really hits. I want to be careful because I have a feeling that at some point it's going to have the Zelda Breath of the Wild / Tears of the Kingdom effect where it becomes to feel samey. But that's okay. That's actually an acceptable part of the experience. In as much as you would expect a world to at some point you've explored most of it. It's okay to have a world, it's okay to have explored something. If the
Hmm.
act of exploring it was fun, which it is, then that's great.
Yeah.
Um, I've heard it's huge.
It's big.
I don't like it's so big that like there are no separate like when you land on the planet, you're all the starting zones are on the same planet. They're just very far away from each other, which is actually a good sign in my opinion.
Right.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah, I mean, once you've explored the whole planet, it starts to feel a bit smaller, right? Because you understand it. But in terms of actual square like footage, it's on the order of the Skyrim map. It's a
That's
little
exactly. I was
smaller
gonna say, how
than
many Skyrims
Skyrim,
is it?
but
That's hilarious.
it's like 80% or 70% of the Skyrim map in terms of square footage, and there's a lot of verticality to it, right? There's a lot of areas in the
Mhm.
Satisfactory map where you can be up on top of something and there's something interesting, and then down below there might be like a little overhang and there's something interesting down there too. So it's not just like a flat map. There's a
Right.
lot of verticality, and exploring it, there's so many different biomes where like they feel like different areas of an alien planet. And so yeah, you find resources while you're exploring, you find power slugs, you find summer sloops and mercer spheres, which are the two important things for what we already talked about. You
Mhm.
find hard drives, which unlock the alternate recipes, which are a big deal. Some of the alternate recipes
Alternate recipe.
significantly. Yeah, you don't know about alternate recipes? Oh, well,
Sorry.
let me tell you. So basically, you find these crashed drop pods out in the world, which you'll find just randomly exploring, and you return the hard drive to the base, to the MAM, and you research it. And then once it's researched, it gives you two options for alternate recipes, and one of them, a really good example of one, is called cast screws, and it literally turns 5 iron ingots into 20 screws. So now you don't need to turn the ingots into rods first. So that's an
Gotcha.
example of a good alternate recipe that like is clearly more powerful. Some of them are just alternates. Like one example is there's a copper one that makes 10 copper ingots out of 5 copper ore and 5 iron ore. So it basically lets you turn iron into copper, but you now have to
Hmm.
use the foundry, which is a bit more of a complicated building because you have two inputs rather than one for the smelter. So the alternate recipes are often kind of trade-offs where you're trading one resource for another. It's an interesting mechanic, and I actually, since you're here, I'd like to get your take on like, would Factorio be a good game for having mechanics like that, where you could have different ways to make the same recipe?
As someone who built an entire mod based on that premise, I'm going to say yes.
Fungible ingredients.
Uh-huh.
Did someone say fungible ingredients?
Yeah, no, that's great. In fact, I would say it's so great that it's easy to overdo, but it is something that really adds interest to the game. And what I mean by that is you seldom in these kinds of games want to have it such that there is one right answer to your problem. If there is one right answer to a problem, change something because you don't want it to be when I say and I'm being a little careful here. Of course, you can have like emergent gameplay, and no matter what you're going to do, yes, people are going to factor in all of these variables and come up with some, perhaps optimal strategy. But like if it's as a good example, the personal laser defenses, they
Mm-hmm.
nerfed those because that really does feel like a
It
one
was the right
solved
answer.
solution for a
Yeah.
lot of exactly. And so I think even if you dig into the production line aspect of these factory games and you start asking that exact same question, is there one answer here? There could be more. That's good. That means that you're going to have to consider these different things. Of course, you always have to consider the outcome of this. Are you making this game so complicated that people can't keep up? Are they having to reach for a calculator, which can be good, but how often are they having to do that? We have
Right.
to make entire mods like the factory planner and things just to engage with the game, not optimize, but just engage with the game. There is a too far. But I think anytime you have something like an alternate recipe where you have pros and cons,
Mm-hmm.
things in either column, as it were, that's a sign of good design, in my
Yeah.
opinion.
Yeah, I'm
So
with you. I like it a lot. I think what's cool about the alternate recipes is it kind of lets you, once you have a decent chunk of them, if you only have two, it doesn't change your base that much. But once you've unlocked 30 of them, say, you often,
are there really that many?
oh, there's more than that. There's like 70 or 80 or something. And
Oh,
there are
wow.
enough hard drives out in the world to get all of them eventually if you want all of them. And I, of course, want
Gotta get
to
'em all.
gotta catch them all, but all that to say, once you have a decent chunk of them, you could build a whole processing chain differently, right? And some of
Mhm.
them allow you to, for example, get more silica by spending a lot of limestone, and silica is the quartz resource, and quartz is pretty rare in the world. But if you've found a lot of quartz, you may not want that alternate. But if you are running low on quartz and you have all the limestone in the world sitting
Yeah,
around, it allows you
that's huge.
to kind of exchange what you have enough of for what you don't have enough of. And I think that's a really good gameplay element because the Satisfactory map is so big and players are going to explore and colonize in different directions. One player might have a ton of sulfur because they kind of went this way towards the east,
Right.
maybe. And another player might not have gone to the east at all with their base, and they've mostly settled to the west, and they are going to have different resources that are easily accessible. And so these alternate recipes do a good job of kind of not making everyone's base use the same ratios of input or power or space. Some of the recipes save you a ton of space because they give you the output product 3 times faster, and it may actually use more input total resources, but you don't need as many assemblers to make it. So there's a lot
That's
of cool
huge.
stuff. Yeah.
That's exactly the kind of gameplay I want more of in Factorio. And
Yeah.
I think in most games, because there's having those sorts of, I have more of this one thing. Like, I guess the key is situational like in my situation, this is optimal. In a different situation, this other thing is optimal. That's great. I love it.
Yeah. And I
Um,
think quality is kind of, it's not the same, but it's in that direction of like, you now have a choice of, do you want to focus on spending more resources to get these better things, or do you not have enough resources and you're not going to do that? It still doesn't change like the ratios of ore, but Factorio is a bit simpler with ore. There's only the 4 ores on the, I guess 5
mhm,
ores on the planet anyway, so you kind of, it's kind of meant to be a game where you always have enough of all 5, and you don't
yeah,
have to explore the map to find a single quartz deposit. That's a special thing like in Satisfactory, so it's a little different in that sense.
sure. But yeah, but it's still the same, especially when you start getting into these like larger mod packs that introduce many different types of ore and many different ways of acquiring that ore, so on and so forth. So
Yeah,
yeah,
and Pyanodons, to its credit, as a mod pack, having a ton of ores and a ton of resources, has a lot of these ideas of either alternate recipes or, um, I mean, yeah, just literally often has multiple ways to make the same thing.
it's like they have like the different tiers for different ores too, if I'm not
Yep.
mistaken. Like you have the tier 1 through 3.
Yeah, so once you
Like
get to the
ore.
next tech tier, you can make more iron plates with the same amount of iron ore, but you usually have to add in a complex like additional ingredient. And so
Right.
Pyanodons is a bit more of a linear like progress, but there are sometimes alternate ways to make the same product in Pyanodons, and I think that's a good choice as well. But like you said, it can get too complicated. And even in Satisfactory, with only a few alternate recipes, you're already like, oh my God, how do I want to make my frames, my modular frames? Do I want to use iron wire so that I don't even need copper to put the wire into this rotor recipe? It's like, it already makes
Can I
the
share with you a life hack?
possibilities huge. Yes.
So this is something that I did on stream, and it's gonna have to load. Has if okay, look, what this is, it's basically my little way of coming up with the ratios in Satisfactory that
Mm-hmm.
may be useful to people because you can sit there and you can use a calculator, or I'm sure there are mods out there, but like there's a program called PureRef, and what it is, it's designed for artists. The notion would be normally that you can essentially quickly arrange images on your screen and, get reference art. So, like if you're trying to draw a character or an
Mm-hmm.
environment or something, you're doing that kind of thing. You can compile just a grouping of stuff here. I use it to come up with ratios in Satisfactory. So, like, what I'd like to do is I'll sit there and I'll say, okay, I'll go to the constructor or whatever, and I'll take a little screen cap of the what goes in and what comes out and at what rate. So, like,
Mm-hmm.
this is 15 seconds per whatever per minute, right? Or
Right.
it gives you 15 items per minute or something. And I'll take a screen cap of that, and I'll make like a row of this screen cap on PureRef, and then I will just chain them together, and that's how I build out how many different um, constructors I'm going to use for any given build to try to keep my ratios in line.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, that's clever. It's kind of like flow charting. I know there's a lot of tools online that help you make flow charts for your
mhm,
Satisfactory builds that like connect them with arrows, and it
mhm.
shows you like how many. So yeah, I personally in this playthrough I started out with a decent number of proper ratios, but I've also been like, you know what, they don't need to be exactly the right ratio because it just works if you don't.
I'm
And
totally
and what's interesting about Satisfactory is because the ores are infinite, as long as it's running, it'll
yeah,
run. Like
yeah,
you
yeah,
don't need to worry.
exactly.
So
Mhm.
getting it running as just the checkbox of like, is my thing producing encased industrial beams at some rate? If yes,
Right.
then you're good. You'll have a full storage container of them eventually. There are certain things where, yeah, if you're not producing them fast enough, it will become an issue eventually. But most items, if you just produce it at all, it will be enough.
Bootstrapping
And
is much easier in
yeah,
that respect. That's good. That's good. I
yeah.
like bootstrapping quickly.
Yeah, and then the late game you can focus on having, the perfect ratios and all that. But I myself am working towards a bus based base, so that won't have the perfect ratios,
I
and
got 3 times fast.
instead, yeah, bus based base. Instead it's going to be like, well, I just need more iron ingots, and so I'm going to try to shovel more iron ingots onto the belt rather than having a bunch of separate individual factories that like go from start to finish. All the ore ends up turning into modular factories. So I think I'm going to go towards a bus, and we're just going to see like, well, we'll just shovel more iron into it if it's not making enough stuff. So I'll kind of treat it like Factorio a little bit more than like I've been treating it like, oh, we'll build this one thing that turns iron ore, copper ore, and steel into, and limestone into
Mhm.
encased industrial beams. I'll just have all that stuff already on belts, and I'll just make encased beams from its inputs that are already on the bus.
That's interesting. Yeah, I intend on playing completely differently than that, and that's great. That's one of the nice things about Satisfactory is that you can do that.
Yeah.
Like I wanna build as much as I can near to the mining site as I possibly can, and if I wanna
Oh,
combine things, make like another little spot over here, not necessarily with perfect ratios, but with like, good ones, and then I'll just belt things into like a central hub area
yeah, I
with
like that. That's cool. And that is one of the other cool things about Satisfactory is because of how it's set up, you really can play differently.
yeah,
And you've got
and it's
trains,
valid and it
which
works.
are trains are awesome, but they're optional. You don't have to use them. Trucks and the vehicle moving around items also optional, but it works. Belts, you have you have drones later in the game. Like there's, I guess those are the only four, but those are four different ways you can move items from point A to point B, and they're all awesome. And
Yeah,
I
totally.
love that they give you those options.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, and, I'll try to, it is my personal goal that if I don't burn out on Satisfactory to learn the different logistics interplays, as it were, with more, faster than I learned the Factorio ones. I'll say it that way.
Yeah, it's definitely a bit simpler. Like Satisfactory doesn't get as complex, I find, as Factorio does, which is nice. But yeah, I definitely recommend, when you play, try to do some exploration when you can, and try to find the strange alien matter resource. It's like an ore deposit in the world, like a iron
Okay,
ore. Because once you
I will
find
do
that,
that.
that gets you towards some quality of life stuff that you'll like.
I love quality of life things. Like, I try to barrel ahead to them as quickly as I possibly can.
Yeah. And I think in Satisfactory 1.0, I do think rushing all the quality of life stuff is worth your time. Whereas in some games it's like, oh, it's painful to bootstrap, it's not really worth it, you might as
Right.
well just wait. It's like, no, get all the quality of life stuff as soon as you can, because it only helps. And it's also fairly cheap. Like a lot of the unlocks in the MAM only require 50 or 100 items, and you can handcraft those if you need to. And so it's like I handcrafted 100 motors because I wanted to unlock something. I mean, it took
Yeah.
a couple minutes, but it's like,
It's a
if
couple of
it's
minutes.
a couple of
Exactly.
minutes, it's like I don't have to automate motors to be able to do that research. I can just handcraft 100 motors. So
There's one thing that I don't or how much how are we on time? Let me
yeah,
ask
we're
that.
good. Go ahead. I'm sure
So I
the
was gonna
listeners
ask.
will love it.
Well, this is actually a question for you because I've been sort of grappling with this one and processing it. So I'm not entirely I don't have a finished opinion here, but like I feel like part of the gameplay loop of Satisfactory could in fact include idling. And so what I mean by that is the resources really are infinite. You get to a patch, that's technically all the iron you could ever possibly need for the entire game if you only
Hmm.
waited long enough.
Yep.
Obviously this wouldn't be fun, but like there are times when I feel like okay, I've got some kind of thing set up where there's power and I don't have to look at that. I'm not consuming certain resources. Like I don't have to, I'm assuming there's something beyond biomass. Like right
Yes.
now I've got like these biomass pellets that I'm
Yes.
feeding all of the foliage that I'm collecting
Uh huh.
into. And I'm pretty sure at some point, because I've mined a piece of coal, I am pretty sure that there will be a coal patch, and I'm pretty sure I can burn that coal in order
There
to
is
make the
coal
power.
power. Yes.
Okay. So I feel like at a certain point, like if I just wanted something to exist, I could in fact do exactly what you said and bootstrap something and just let it run. Fill up. I like just I need to go learn Spanish. I'll be back in a couple of days, or whatever, right? Um, so what are your thoughts on using idle strats, I think is the way to phrase that,
Yeah, no, that's
in
a
order
really good
to
question,
circumvent the
actually.
gameplay mechanics?
Yeah, that comes up in, especially when people talk about Greg Tech New Horizons as well, because some of the processes in Greg Tech New Horizons are painfully slow. We're talking like, 5 minutes for one craft of one item, and you need like thousands of that item or whatever. And it's like, oh, you could set up like 4 of those, but it's still going to take 8 hours to give you what you need. That's all late game stuff.
Mhm.
That's thousands of hours in. I never got that far, but I've heard about it, and it's kind of a similar topic of like, letting your computer run for 8 hours. Is that fun? Is that good? Should you do that? I think in Satisfactory, I don't like to play idle time. Like, I log out. I don't want to let the game run while I'm not there. One thing that it can do in Satisfactory is get you a lot of awesome sync points, which are like the fun little, mostly decoratives, but there's a couple things that are actually useful for your factory too in there.
Ladders.
Like ladders, exactly. So, but you could get way more coupons, right, if you just let your game idle overnight. And so to me, that feels a little bit like cheating. However, I will say that there are three, I categorize gameplay in Satisfactory into three categories. There's exploration and hunting for stuff. Like, I'm going out in the world, I've got my weapons, I've got healing, I've got my jetpack. Like, the goal is to go out and get hard drives or power slugs or Mercer spheres or summer sloops, or go find
Booga
all of the
booga
above.
hunter gathering.
Yeah. So that's gameplay thing one. Gameplay thing two is actually building the factory, right? Like, I'm working on connecting belts and building assemblers and getting things connected so that when I'm done with this project, I will have, reinforced iron plates automated. And now they're going into a container, or they're going into the space elevator, or wherever it is I want them. And then there's part three, which is kind of the like meta factory building of like, oh, I'm going to build a bunch of foundations, and I'm going to build a door into here, and I'm going to build a wall. Like, mostly aesthetics, but also just kind of the bones of your factory, so to speak,
Mhm.
and working on the aesthetics of that. I feel like that's another big thing that players can choose to engage with as much or as little as they want. I see posts on the Satisfactory subreddit of like insane builds that take people 400 hours, and they're not progressing their exploration at all. They're not progressing their factory much at all. I mean, a few minutes of that is spent putting fuel generators in, or whatever it is, but most of it's just getting foundations to look like a circle, or building this thing so it looks like a really cool building. And it's like, when you're doing that, that is idle time, and exploration is idle time for your factory. So I like to kind of, if I want something to idle for a while, or I want to come back and have a big pile of things, I usually just focus on one of those other gameplay elements for a while, rather than like, oh, I want my 300 motors so I can finish this research. I'm fine with automating it slowly to only maybe 2 per minute. And then it's like, well, I just need to spend 150 minutes doing other stuff. And I feel like there's enough to do in Satisfactory. Like, I could go work on power for a while. I could go set up a big coal power plant somewhere out in the world. Or I could go explore and try to find a bunch of hard drives and Mercer spheres. So because of that, I think I try to build my idle time into just lining up with when I'm doing non-factory things. So it's kind of like idling in a way, but I don't actually like literally leave the game running and go do something else. And I don't judge people who do. That's totally fine. I do think the awesome coupons feel a little weird when like idling is going to get you so much more of those compared to people who don't. Like, if I just left my computer run for 8 hours and I set up a little production line for awesome coupons, I'd come back to like 40 or 50 coupons. So those feel a little bit, that feels a little cheesy to me, but I don't judge people who do that. It's not that hard to get a bunch of coupons, even if you're not sort of doing that.
They don't
But
seem to be. They don't. Maybe you can enlighten me a bit more. But like, I did set one of those up, and it didn't seem to me like there was. It seemed to me most of the things that were in there were kind of, with the exception of ladders, and maybe there was the cart or whatever. But it seemed like it was mostly cosmetic,
exactly,
home buildy things. So
yeah,
it's not
they're
like
mostly
you're
cosmetic.
getting the game to bend
But
over backwards now to do.
But yeah, I don't know if you went to the last tab in the shop. you can also buy things like ammo or a stack of encased industrial beams. As soon as you unlock a
Oh.
resource, you can buy a stack of that for
Oh, okay.
coupons. So if you did farm coupons AFK, it would make things a little easier for you when you're like, oh, I need 100 motors. You could just buy them with 3 coupons or whatever.
Sure.
And people who have less coupons won't be able to do that. It's a very minor thing. Like I don't consider it cheating at all. But you will have a little bit easier of a time with the game if you let it idle for 8 hours to give you coupons, I would say.
I'll put it to you this way. One of the things that I did was, and this is probably very stupid. However, that's just my brand sometimes. No,
There's no
basically I
wrong way
set
to
up
play. We already discussed this.
I built 20 hand miners. Those little like you can
Mm-hmm.
just set them down, and I just pelted one. I put a miner on it like a regular one, so it's like offloading ore. But then I put 20 of these things around,
Uh-huh.
and what I would do is, even though it's only like 1 point per ore, I would just go through, grab all of them, dump them into this one storage container, let them
Yeah.
feed into the thing, and whatever, every
Free money.
time. Yeah, exactly. And it's not like you, of course, discover pretty quickly that if you do even minor processing on this stuff, that, you get much more. But at the same time, once you put these drills out, they don't require power.
Yep.
The only thing you require is just to like hop down there, take literally a minute and 30 seconds to put them in. And then all of a sudden you have however many thousand points that's just going to gradually go in while you go off and play the game.
Exactly.
So,
No, that's a great strategy. It doesn't work for very many coupons because the cost rises per coupon exponentially. So eventually,
oh, does it?
2000,
Okay.
yeah, eventually 2000 iron ore is going to be nothing. I think my coupons are already to like 160,000 points per coupon or something.
Wow. Okay.
So yeah, but the more processed stuff also gives you way more points. So like you feed it with your most advanced stuff and you'll always get a decent number of coupons from that. But yeah, all that to say, even the idea of idling, eventually the exponential curve of coupon cost is going to make it so whatever points per minute you were getting is not going to contribute that much anymore.
Yeah.
So there is kind of a nice ceiling to even idle time being valuable. I don't know. It's a pretty great balance if you ask me. Like I've found, at least I'm spending more time working on aesthetics than I normally do in factory or 3D building games. And I've found that with doing that, I haven't needed any more items than the basic amount. Like I can automate stuff with one assembler and it's enough. And so I almost wonder sometimes if the game should require more. But if you're not working on aesthetics, the 2.5 per minute might feel pretty slow. But when I spend 3 or 4 hours just messing with factory building stuff, I come back and now I've got 2,000 items. I haven't really felt the need to do any more idling than that. But
that's fair, actually, and that's kind of what I was looking for as a response, because like not that exact answer, but some way to, I don't want to leave my game running and then come back to it. I will if that is something that I absolutely have to do. Like if I feel like I'm in a place where the tedium of solving the problem, I mean, because I got 3 kids, I'm doing a whole lot
you
of
got
stuff.
life.
I only have so much that I can contribute towards this, but still, the fact that you have all these other options available to you is great. As a minor tangent, are you familiar with Valheim at all?
Yes, I've played a decent amount. I haven't gotten past the last time I burnt out. I was in the swampy area with all the deadly everything. I don't know. It was a lot.
Yeah. There is. I love the base building in that game, and that was one where I felt like I could, spend an hour gathering resources or whatever, right? And then I could build something, and that felt really fun. Like I love, like I've made videos on how to do building in Valheim.
Oh, cool!
Because it was really, really enjoyable. And I have a feeling that once I get in the mindset of Satisfactory, I might be able to do the same thing. But I have no idea. I don't know what's out there just yet. I'm still working with foundations and walls.
There's a lot between all the things you can get in the awesome shop, and then there's the color swatches and different colors of things. Like some of the things people build is crazy. I'm just trying to build something that doesn't look like this is just a flat floor, and that's it. And there's another floating flat floor above it. Like I want to do more than that. For me, that anything more than that is success. So
this bar is very low, but if I cross it, this is good.
Exactly.
I know exactly what you mean.
It's a low bar, but awesome. Well, we have gone nice and long. Had lots to talk about today. Thank you
Oh,
for hanging
wow.
out, Galdoc. It's been great.
Yeah. No, thank you so much for having me. It's always a pleasure to come and do this. So,
Yeah, we'll definitely have you back on the cast in the future, I am sure. For you, the listener, if you'd like to support the podcast, head over to patreon.com/Krydax. All support is so appreciated. And Galdoc, is there a place people can find you or support you?
yeah, I do have a Patreon. It's the Taylor series. I still need to update that at some point. And I have a Discord and a YouTube channel. Galdoc's Tutorials, I believe, is what it's called. But I'm releasing videos there for my Blender tutorial series, as you mentioned earlier. So if you want to support me, go check those out. And
Yeah.
yeah,
I'll put links to all those in the show notes as well. And yeah, first and third Sunday is when the podcast gets streamed, or Mondays or whenever days close to that, if that's what works. So this next podcast will actually be 3 weeks from now on October 6th, and we will have a very special guest. I believe I can spoil it now. Troopin will be joining us on the podcast, and so that'll be a really fun one. Especially given his experience with Factorio Space Age. So we'll see what he can and can't say, but it'll be fun to have him on and chat on October 6th. And if you guys have any questions, ideas for topics, or ideas for guests, please head over to the Crydania Discord and let me know there. I'll put a link in the description to all these things. And yeah, as always, thank you guys for listening, and we'll see you next week. Always remember, the factory must grow.
all right, cool.
All right, that was great. Thanks so much.
Yeah, dude.
Sorry we went long.
Oh, I don't care. This was I slated 2 hours or whatever for this. This is perfectly
you
fine.
seemed to be okay with it, and I was definitely okay with it, so it was great.
Yeah, no, I love this sort of thing. And yeah, I want to play more Satisfactory, but I'm trying to make myself do it under two circumstances. One, I'm streaming, or two, it's my son. So
Yeah, that's fair.
And if you ever want to, like the last time I streamed playing Satisfactory, you'd be welcome to join in. Like literally, there were some people who were in the chat who wanted to hang out. And sure, I opened the game up to multiplayer, and people came in, and we just were silly together. So
yeah, that's fun. I haven't ever done Satisfactory multiplayer, and I tend not to do multiplayer very often, but you never know.
that's fair.
If I get the whimsy.
It's something that I'm so not. It's not like Factorio where you have to worry about something going completely wrong. Oh no, the biters ate the base or something. The worst that's going to happen is someone ran over a doggo, which would be terrible, but still.
Yes. No one has to tell. That's awesome.
Cool.
All right. Well, as always, thanks for hanging out. We'll chat more in the future, I'm sure.
Indeed. All right, man. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. And I will talk to you later.
See you later, Galdoc. All right. Well, I am going to head out. I will be streaming Satisfactory, talking of, here in a bit, but I'm going to do some lunch and do a couple other errands around the house. So I will see you all soon on the Satisfactory end of things. Also, I don't know if everybody's still here, but regarding a few of the Twitch comments, Parley Charker mentioning band-aiding a build with power shards and belt upgrades, that is definitely a thing. I do like that you can take your old stuff and just make it better without having to rebuild anything. Okay, now we do a Mark II miner with 2 power shards, and now it's 4 times as fast as it was before. That is nice. Yeah, Dave mentioning combat as a gating mechanic. I do find that interesting. I think they can make the combat a little better and more interesting without making it too involved for people that don't like it. I think they still have a little bit of room for improvement there. The recycler being kind of an option for alternative recipes. Yeah, or the recycler closing the option to alternative recipes. I don't know. I think you could recycle into the default recipe and still have alternate recipes to make a thing. It's just when you recycle it, it always recycles to the default. No, that wouldn't work, would it? Every item would have to track what recipe it was made with, because then you could get the wrong resource out. I don't know. I don't have an answer for that. But anyway, I'm going to head out. If you guys have more thoughts, head over to Discord and let me know there, and I'll see you all later.